Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Nelson. I'm going to get us started. We've got Mr. Boxley ready to go. Looks like we're all dialed into the computer here. I'm chairman of the Sealaska board, but I'm also a trustee on the board of trustees. And the main role right now for me, though, is this partnership with the university. I work at the university. I'm a vice chancellor out there. And I know that our chancellor is traveling, going to a board of regents meeting, but this is the first in a series of lectures, as you know, throughout the month of November. And we're very lucky to kick it off with Mr. David Boxley. And Chuck's going to do more of an intro there with David. But I just wanted to share an opening welcome, and I appreciate you attending. And then also thanking, as we're going to continue to do forever, Mr. Boxley and his work, especially things in this building. When you walk in, a lot of these things that he's contributed. You saw in the front of the clan house there is one of the things that we're very proud of, that we're able to secure Mr. Boxley. And I think at the end of the month, his son David is also going to be here, and that's another one I'm looking forward to, is the wrapping the series up with the younger generation of artists that are coming up. And on that note, that is a driving part of this collaboration between the university and Sealaska Heritage, is working with Rosita and pursuing her vision of developing Juneau as the Northwest Coast capital, art capital of the world. And I know at UAS in Juneau we are very much in alignment. We don't have a robust set of programs there. I think over the years it's been at best a minor in our offerings, and we've had classes here and there, but we are going to be going out for a full recruitment for a faculty line in Northwest Coast Art very, very soon here this year. So we're hoping this time next year we'll have somebody in faculty ranks there that are in the regular rank and file faculty. Like I said, I think we've been doing it mostly through adjuncts and scattered offerings here and there, but we really feel like there's a future in Northwest Coast Art from the university's perspective. It's just growing, and it's appealing obviously to many segments, but for us as Native folks, it's much more than art, and it's just captures a meaningful part of who we are. And I know that the younger artists, that they are thirsting for that deeper knowledge as they're pursuing that, and we're looking to be good partners in this effort. I'll stop because there's limited time here. We have a featured artist, and I'll turn it over to Chuck to do that introduction.
Well, that's exciting news to hear that those plans won't be terribly affected by the declines in budgets we all know are beginning in the state now. My name is Chuck Smythe. I'm the director of the Culture and History Department here at Sealaska Heritage, and I'm very pleased to welcome everyone to the first of our November lecture series, as was being said jointly with the University of Alaska Southeast. We're very happy to have David Boxley here, who is a Tsimshian carver from Metlakatla. He was raised by his grandparents, from whom he learned many Tsimshian traditions, including his language. In 1986, after a decade of teaching and being a basketball coach, he decided to devote all of his energies to carving and researching the legacy of Northwest Coast Indian art. David Boxley has become a nationally recognized Indian artist, showing, teaching, and demonstrating his art in many museums in the United States and in Europe. Besides making functional and decorative pieces, such as bentwood boxes, rattles, masks, box drums, prints, and panels, David is well respected as a totem pole artist and has made about 56 totem poles in the last 26 years. No, 65 totem poles in the last 26 years. David has been deeply involved in the rebirth of Tsimshian culture through organizing and hosting potlatches in Alaska and Washington, and was responsible for reintroducing the potlatch back in his hometown of Metlakatla. He has been directly involved in the formation of 4 successful dance groups, and now has a new group called Githon, People of the Salmon, which will be the featured dance group in this year's celebration in 2016. We're very happy for that. And he has composed over 40 songs over his career. He is, of course, the artist who carved and painted the exceptional and unique house front downstairs in the front of our clan house. And currently he is giving a class in form line design at the Gastineau Human Services. In the evenings, he is volunteering his time to teach Tsimshian in a mini kind of in-depth course here upstairs in this building. So we are very pleased to have David here today. Thank you.
Chuck told me a few minutes ago that he was going to introduce me and took my introduction off my website. Man, I've got to update that website. I've done a few more polls than what he said, and it's odd to hear somebody talk about me, so I have to shake off the nerves here. Okay. Thank you for all of you for gathering here to listen to what I have to say. I'm really fortunate to be able to do what I do. I Sealaska Heritage. Thank you for Sealaska Heritage for inviting me and asking me to do this. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here. I'm very humbled with this opportunity. 36 years I've been making art. I've had the fortune to be part of the reconstruction and rebuilding of Tsimshian culture in my village and with Tsimshian people as far south as Seattle. And I'm happy with the progress that we've made, and so many people are singing and dancing now, and so many people are carving now that weren't when I first started. I wanted to start with this picture here. It's an oil painting by a really good friend of mine, Chris Hopkins, is a non-native, one of, I think, the best painters there is. Does very, very well, very good job with depicting people. And just wanted to give him a shout with to show that painting. And Northwest Coast Native art is a really an amazing, diverse, and really original style of art. A few years ago, I took my group to Los Angeles, and we danced down at the Disney Center there, and we got to go see the King Tut exhibit as a side after we had finished. And everybody was just really in awe of course, of the King Tut Egyptian art. And we went through it, and I want to tell you, I don't think I was really impressed. The only thing that really impressed me was the gold. Everything was just covered in gold. But I thought, man, our sculpture is as good or better than anything I see here in this millions of dollars worth of ancient stuff. I think our stuff stands with the best art in the world. I'm talking, when I say our, I mean Tlingit Haida and Tsimshian, the northern style work. It's just really amazing. Up and down the coast, the art changes. It markedly changes from what's called the north, the Tlingit Haida and the Tsimshian, and then to the central division. It's a great picture of a Tlingit Potlatch. But when you get down, and this among the Haidas, the three northern tribes hold up a pretty strong banner with our art and our culture. We're very strongly related in the way we live. The salmon, the sea, the cedar, we all share that. The only thing that really is different is our language and a little bit of our sculpture. We get down into the central area, the Kwakwaka'wakw speaking people down in Vancouver Island and what we call the middle of the northwest coast. The art begins to change. Two-dimensional art changes. The way they use colors, the structure of their masks and their totem poles begins to have a marked change. When you get down as far into Puget Sound, southern British Columbia, then is that really blurry? Sorry about that. The Salish people weren't totem pole carvers, didn't have the big natural-looking masks and sculpture that the northern people had, but their art is beautiful and in its own way, but it just changes, and two-dimensional art is completely different. The differences between, someone asked me what the differences were between Tsimshian, Tlingit, and Haida, especially sculpture. I thought I'd include this slide because I was a part of a totem pole project at KIC in Ketchikan a few years ago, and Don Varnell and Israel Shotridge and I each did a pole representing the three tribes at that time, while Israel and I produce more easily recognized pieces that are Tsimshian and Tlingit. Don is a little more modern in his approach, and the style is more his than Haida in that particular totem pole. But the only way to really tell the difference between, especially in totem pole sculpture, is to set them side by side. And it would be good to have the exact same figures on all three poles, and you would see the difference. One of the differences with Tsimshian work is that it's very naturalistic and looks like there's actually a skeleton beneath the faces, and a little bit rounded cheekbones and deeply carved, while the Tlingit work, although it's similar in that the figures are stacked one on top of the other like the Tsimshian, the faces are a little bit different, a little more angular. The eye orbs are a little more, a little bigger, and the little things like the size of the lips and nostrils, they're in Tlingit poles, they're larger, a little more obvious. Another way we differ is in masks, and masks among the Tsimshian, Haida, and Tlingit are really different. I want to go back, and my nerves got the better of me a minute ago, and I forgot to say that the subject of what I'm talking about today is my journey, and it's very much influenced by a whole lot of factors and people. And what you're going to see, and what I'm going to be talking about as we go through this, is keep in mind it's what has influenced me over this time. And a lot of people would be surprised that they have influenced me. People that, including people in the front row, have influenced me. You know, there's a lot of it. It isn't just someone who showed me how to pick up a pencil and draw on a piece of paper that have made an influence on the direction that I have chosen in my life, or has been chosen for me. Form line. Form line is a big deal these days, and I'm really happy that Rosita and Sealaska Heritage have made it a important thing to try to improve on up and down the coast, and I'm glad to hear all of the work that's being done, because form line is the foundation of everything we do. I was working back in the early 80s. I was working on a carving in my shop in Metlakatla, and my grandfather was leaning on the bench, and he was looking at what I was doing. And he watched me for a while and didn't say anything. Then he came over and he just kind of nudged me like that, and he went like this. And he put his finger on the piece I was working on, and he said, "David, that's what the people buy." And what he meant was, do good work. Do good form line design. Because no matter how good the sculpture is, if the form line isn't good, then the whole thing isn't good. And we have to raise the bar. We have to raise the bar for ourselves, and we have to raise the bar for our people. just because it's native made doesn't mean it's good. You can tell that by going and looking in the tourist stores. You know, we need to raise the bar. It doesn't mean we look down at our own people and the art they're making. It just means that we want to pull everybody up, so that and in celebration, you know, when you have the juried art show, you know, that's a real concerted effort to make sure that people who enter their very best, and if they're turned down, go work harder and enter your very best, you know. Ovoids. Bill Holm, University of Washington, coined the term ovoids. It's the center of our design system. This particular ovoid, the outside of it is the same exact size. I'm doing this to show a point. The inside is the space is a little bit bigger, so that you can see that individual style is what makes tribal style. What I mean by that is, even a long time ago, a really strong artist from one tribe would influence a whole bunch of other artists, and then consequently people would say, oh, that's Tlingit, or that's Haida, or that's Tsimshian, because of a really good artist who had his own students who then taught others and taught others. The form line system now, some people really like the thick form lines, some people really like thin form lines. At one time, we all did the same. We all had really thick form lines with very little, what they call negative space or background space. And then sometime over the centuries, different artists said, oh, I'm going to make my form lines a little thinner. I'm going to make a little more space. And then things developed like that. We concentrate on there's been an explosion of beautiful regalia over the last like 2 generations or 2 decades. And you look at celebration now, and holy moly, you go there and you just see some just amazing art people are just walking around with. You know, and there's a lot of people who would pay such huge amounts of money for the beautiful art that is being proudly danced. And in the old days, the guys who were producing this really fantastic art passed on some really, really good examples. And unfortunately, in some ways, the only way to see it is to go look places like the Smithsonian to see that Tsimshian house front from northern BC. There is a group of young people that are producing a lot of good, beautiful, modern, I guess you could call it contemporary art, but they're all still based on the ovoid, still based on the U-form. The influences of a few really strong artists from each tribe are influencing young people too, but there are a few young ones like my son David who are really students of the old masters, who just really study the old stuff. And that house front downstairs really is a direct result of our just studying old pieces and wanting, when people walk through that door down there, to go back in time and say, this could have been in Port Simpson, British Columbia in 1800. That we took a lot of pride in ending up with that result. Innovation is fine. We're in favor of innovation. Taking form line and making it contemporary or modern. It's a good thing, but we also have to be careful. There's a lot to do yet. People use form line in a commercial way, and I don't know if anyone in this room owns a pair of rubber boots with designs by Corey Morris, a Tsimshian artist. He was one of my students. But like I said, innovation is good, and making it live in a contemporary setting is a good thing too. We just have to be careful that we don't turn to this. We have to be careful that we don't think this is good that we demand more of our artists so that they don't turn out things that someone says, oh, that's so beautiful. No, it's not. It's not beautiful. It's almost an insult to rank that with the best art of our people. We want to always strive for excellence. We want to always push ourselves and try to produce something that we'll be proud of and the next generation can learn from. My focus, as I said today, is the influences on my journey, but I'm Tsimshian, and want to focus on the art of my people, but like I said at the beginning, there are a lot of folks not from the same origins that I am that affected my journey and the journey of others. We come from northern British Columbia. The Tsimshian people are divided into 4 linguistic divisions. We're all the same people, but it's in our languages that we're different. The Niska people from the Nass, the Gitxsan people from the Skeena River, the Coast Tsimshian, which I am, from the coastline in between those rivers, and the southern British Columbia, or the southern Tsimshians, or Kitasoo people, who there are very few left who speak any of that language left. Our people, all of our people, the Tlingit Haida Tsimshian people, were influenced by the runs of the Ulagan every year and came together in places like Fishery Bay. That woman, I think this is a great picture, that woman is sitting on a log that's pressing Ulagan grease from that basket to your right there down into that box after the Ulagans have been curing for 2 weeks in a pit and then boiled in those big vats. It's a very labor-intensive work. But our people came together that way, and the reason I put this slide in there is our people came together that way every year. All of the tribes came together at just a couple of locations. Thousands of people came together, and they brought their art with them. And Ulagan oil was put into bentwood boxes and traded up and down the coast. And on those bentwood boxes was 2-dimensional art, form line. And that is how our art went north and south. Our people are a seagoing people. Our people who gabawanea de haskiika. We ate food from down the beach, as well as out on the ocean with our seagoing canoes. And when we gathered together, people supplied the things that they had in their countries, in their areas, and traded with everyone else. For just one example, the Haidas had the big red cedar logs, the Tlinkits had marvelous coppers, traded with the Haidas and the Tsimshians of the copper, and we had the centers of Ulagan oil too. Now, those are just 3 examples, but you get together, you work all year and load up your canoes and go get together and see, just like Celebration every 2 years, you get to see people you haven't seen for a long time. And the Potlatch, our system of notary public, was another major way, and probably the major way besides trading at Fishery Bay, that our people got together. One of the reasons I really love this picture is because these guys were actually just dancing. And if you look at this closely, there's eagle down everywhere in this picture. And this chief was a big guy. If you look at all of the things that he owns in this picture, those things, those stories and those ownerships and those rights and privileges were all told at potlatches, where all of this art was an integral part of those days. It wasn't just art. It said, this is who we are. This is our history. This is where we've come from. Then a change came. In the early 1820s, a lay missionary from England came to the Tsimshian people, sent by the Church Missionary Society. And Church of England. He learned how to speak our language in 6 months. He came to this area that we called home in the early days. This is northern British, or this is British Columbia, from the southern Tsimshian up to the Gitxsan people. He taught our people how to play musical instruments, how to make barrels, how to make soap, a number of different industries. They moved from their traditional village settings to Port Simpson to be near the Hudson's Bay Company for protection and for trading, all nine of the main villages of our people, and then left there shortly before the smallpox hit and destroyed 3/4 of the northwest population, mostly the Haida and Tsimshian and Kwagil people. It was just starting to get to the Tlingit people when the smallpox ended. The Haidas went from 12,000 to 400 in one winter. I always joke with my friends who are in the Haidas, that's why you guys are all related. There's so few of you. The Tsimshians lost half our people. We had about as many to begin with and lost about half. This is the village of Metlakatla. We moved from Port Simpson back to our traditional village with the missionary right before the smallpox hit. 500 of our people moved to this village right before the smallpox hit. 500 people died in Port Simpson. 5 people died in this village because they quarantined them, wouldn't let anyone in. In 1887, we moved to Alaska, to the village of Metlakatla, New Metlakatla. I was looking at this slide and I realized I know a couple of these ladies. They're gone now, but these were the elders when I was a kid. But that little girl, third from the right, is such a neat person. And I didn't realize till I was looking at the slides, I went, wow, I know these people. Boardwalk streets, I grew up on boardwalk streets. The cars drove on the boardwalk streets. We played on them and under them. But the influence of the missionary and the positive and the negative influences of the missionary changed our lives. We had to give up all the old ways, all the art, all the singing and dancing, everything to become prim and proper Christian people. I put this slide in here on purpose because I do not believe that those people are smiling because they're happy in that school. I think they're smiling because they were told to smile, or something happened there that they were told to smile, because there are a lot of stories about residential schools that are horror stories. The village of Metlakatla has seen a revival in my lifetime. The last 30 years, my son and his generation are leading the way in celebrating the fact that we are still Native people and still strong. And there are 5 dance groups in that little village. That bottom photo down there shows still we have a connection to Canada. We count strongly our connection to our people over on the other side. One of the things that happened to our art is that the Potlatch, because of efforts by missionaries and government officials who wanted our lands, the Potlatch was banned. And large amounts of dance masks and regalia and things we used to celebrate who we are were confiscated, and people were put into prison for singing and dancing and giving away gifts. And a lot of our art now is in museums like this museum in New York. A really quick thought about this. The very first time I went to this museum, I walked in the door right where this picture was taken. I walked in the doorway of this Northwest Coast Hall, and I couldn't go in. It felt like the air was jello. I couldn't go in. I saw our stuff in there and I wanted to cry. on to now. I'd never seen our work like this before. So I went and looked at dinosaurs for about a half hour. And I got my courage up and I went through, and if you look at this, the room, it's set up in cubbies like this. And it took me the rest of the day to go from this end down to the very end. There's a door on the other side, and there's just an amazing canoe down on the other end, 60-foot canoe. I realized as I was walking through there that 99% or more of my people had never seen this kind of stuff. We didn't even know it existed. And that really was a big push in my journey toward trying to educate my own people. One of my dreams is to take a load of alder and cedar and drive up to a museum and carve my way through it, you know, and just replicate as much as I could and bring it home and say, look, you know, look what we did. Look at what our people still can do. Back in the 1930s, there was a project called the CCC. It was all over the country, all over the United States, and it gave people jobs after the Depression or during that time. And one of the things that happened was native fishermen and carpenters were given jobs replicating old totem poles among the Tlingit people, among the Tsimshian and Haida people too. And totem parks like Ketchikan and Wrangell and Sitka were the result of those efforts by those men. It was kind of like the first step of bringing this back. One of the bad things that happened during the days of the early settlers coming to the Northwest Coast was smallpox was disease. The Spanish flu hit right after smallpox. You know, our people were just starting to come back from smallpox, and the Spanish flu hit during World War I and wiped out a whole bunch more people. In my village, where my grandparents lived, there were 2 houses right across the street, and the entire families of both those houses died in 1 week from Spanish flu. So what I'm getting at is that it affected the apprenticeship system. Those diseases affected the apprenticeship system, and people who were just really, really great artists and knew all of the legends and the stories and the songs and dances died. And not everybody, but a lot of them died, so they weren't able to pass on what they knew. So consequently, even though a few people like this gentleman who carried on carving during the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, there were very few of them, and then but the quality of the art wasn't the same. Then along came 2 or 3 guys who changed everything. This is Mangal Martin. He belongs to the Kwakwaka'wakw people from the Central Coast. He was a chief. He was very knowledgeable from a small boy, and he worked in Victoria and replicated. If you've ever been to Victoria and you see the museum in Victoria, British Columbia, all the totem poles outside that village he made. And he taught a whole family, the Hunt family, his nephews, and how to be carvers. And among the Kwakiutl people was a huge influence in bringing back that art among those people. Even though the Kwakiutl never lost their potlatching, they did it in secret. They hid it away from the government agents. But he was a really big influence, and he's very well thought of as a leader in revitalizing that. Bill Home is an educator. Bill Home was an academic. Bill Home was a pretty amazing artist himself, and affected a lot of people, has written numerous books, and has probably stood right where I'm standing before. He is responsible for a lot of contemporary artists, native and non-native, pursuing this art. The thing that I think that he is most important to be remembered for is that he supplied us with the opportunity through his books, through his classes. A very generous guy. So among the Haida people, Bill Reed was a radio personality, didn't live his culture until he was well into his adulthood, and influenced all of the major Haida artists, and Haida artists in general, and non-Haida artists in general. I never met him, but I spoke to him twice on the phone a few years before he passed away. A new generation of artists has followed them, and I'm reiterating again why I'm putting all these artists out there when I'm talking about Tsimshian art, because this is my journey. These are the people that have influenced me. These are the people I admire. These are the people that have been on some of the same journeys I have. I admire, Robert is a good friend of mine, but I admire him because he is a great artist, but he's also a culture bearer. If there's anything that I want to be remembered for more than my art, it's the fact that I love my culture and I don't want it to go away, and I've done everything I can among my own people to try to make sure that that doesn't happen, that it doesn't go away. His brother Reggie, both Robert and Reggie have been big influences. I think Reggie's the best mask dancer among the northern people, best big mask dancer. He's influenced how I dance and how I've taught the gentlemen in my group to dance. Norman Tate is a Niska. He comes from the Nass. He's been around a long time. He's older now than this photograph, and has been a big influence on his own people with totem pole carving. He brought back the old style of Niska totem pole carving. This guy always comes up to me every single time, and I'm doing something, and he'll go, "Oh, that's how they do it." He's a very low-key guy. He taught me how to make some things that I still use and make, and a good friend. But as I said about how certain artists set styles, well, Nathan sets styles. People know it's Tlingit art when they look at it, you know, but it's because it's Nathan. You know, he's been very influential. Another Haida artist who's just amazing is Jimmy Hart. He's Chief Edenshaw. That name is very old, comes from eons ago. I know that's a bad slide or a bad picture on the bottom right, but that's a dance screen. That's a full sculptured dance screen. That just blows my mind to see that. That's amazing. I didn't want to make you think that I didn't care about the weavers, and I got them all in one picture, I think, here. But this is one family, of course, Dolores and her daughters, and the three daughters who are just so amazing. Evelyn was a painter when I met her, but now she's one of the best Chilkat weavers living. So she influences a lot of people. Northwest Native art was started in Metlakatla in the early 70s by Jack Hudson, who came to teach. He started teaching right after I left for college, and he taught there for like 30 years. Sorry. In 1982, I sponsored the first ever totem pole raising, first ever potlatch in my village. I had never even seen a potlatch. I had never even been to one. All I did was read about them and the rules that had to happen. And I carved a totem pole to honor my grandmother. It lasted for 32 years, and just the summer before last, my son and I took it down because it was deteriorating, and we carved a replica and put it up. I'll show you a picture in a minute. And I really love that picture on the right because all of those kids are all adults now with their own families. And that was the first time they'd ever seen anything like that. Matter of fact, 3 days before the potlatch, I was walking down the street, and someone stopped me and said, "Hey, David, when's your potluck?" And it really scared me, because I knew I had a lot more work to do. There are some really amazing young Tsimshian and Tlingit and Haida artists, but pretty amazing. This young man who I know very well, my son, my eldest, I think is going to, my own personal opinion, you can say, well, he's saying that because you're his father, but I think this boy is going to be known eventually as one of the very best. I don't think there's anyone who can do design as well as he does, old or young. I think he's just got it. He really understands. But he's a good boy, and he's very humble about what he knows. And I have no worries about my people because of him. Phil Gray is a Tsimshian Cree young fellow that lives in Vancouver. Amazing artist. He's been directly influenced by my son David. They're friends, but his art, especially his 2D art, has been really influenced by Davy. Corey Morris is a student of mine, but before he came to me, he was already one of the very best engravers of silver and gold. He's married to a Tsimshian. He's Tsimshian from Loch Lambs, but he's married to a woman from Metlakatla, Alaska. They live in BC. John Hudson is the son of Jack Hudson and has taken over his father's position at the high school in Metlakatla, teaching teaching Tsimshian art or native art. And a new student of mine, and my son's, this is Clifton Guthrie from Metlakatla. He grew up in Metlakatla as a basketball jock and learned from Jack Hudson, but came to my son and I and took a whole different journey, a whole different direction with his art. Very talented. I can't wait for him to stop being a full-time carpenter and be a full-time artist, because I think he's going to blow people away if he really wants to. Okay. I want to show you some more of my journey. This was my very first native art show at Daybreak Star Indian Cultural Center in Seattle. I didn't know what I was doing. I copied a whole bunch of Haida and Tlingit totem poles from books. I went down to the store and bought some wood and used model paint and made myself dizzy because I didn't realize smelling model paint would get you all dizzy. I didn't know about acrylic paint. I was doing it myself. I didn't know what I was doing. I want to tell you a real quick thing. I sent 4 little model totem poles. I was so excited. I sent 4 of them to the gift shop here at the airport in Juneau. They rejected them, sent them back, said they weren't very good. It really was one of those things where, what? Okay. So I'm going to try harder. So I tried harder and tried to make my work better. And gift shops don't get too much of my work anymore. They can't afford it. So I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that it was an eye-opener for me to be rejected as part of the journey. I'm going to show you quickly. I'm running out of time. I'm going to show you a number of things that I've done, and I'm just going to let you look for a second. You guys were there when we were dancing that one on the right at the Smithsonian. I included this one because this is worn by Tlingit elder John Hanlon from Hoona. I was proud to do that for him. I saw a picture of him a few days ago wearing that, and I thought, oh man, cool. I'm not talking a lot during this part because it embarrasses me to show you my work. My wife told me not to say that, but I did anyway. I had the honor of carving a totem pole for the Museum of the American Indian. We spent the last couple of weeks, my son and I spent the last 2 weeks of the project carving it in the Smithsonian and the Museum of the American Indian. We were on what do you call it, streaming video. And there are two really great things about this project was, one, the video went back to it was online, it went back to my village, and two of my friends who are teachers in our school, first grade and third grade, had it on the whole 2 weeks for their kids to watch us, and they would text my son saying, wave. So we had to wave at the camera once an hour, and she texted back and said, the kids are waving back at the monitor. So it was a source of pride for my village. And the other thing was that for 2 weeks, because of all the media attention we had, the name Metlakatla and the name Tsimshian was all over the world for 2 weeks. And that really was a source of pride for us. It was really neat to have that happen. This is the replica of the pole I did 32 years ago. My son and I did this one summer before last. This is my son. You'll see this one being raised in a minute, but my son raised this to honor my mother, his grandmother. I did this one 30 years earlier to honor my grandmother. I've had the opportunity to restore poles that I've done in the past. This one was just a few months back, 40-foot totem pole. It was a lot of fun climbing around up on that thing. You might recognize this slide or this picture. What a source of pride for our people, for the people of Juneau, to have this amazing building. Pretty amazing. It's a piece of art by itself. And people talk about this all up and down the coast, this building. I know I tell everybody about it, that they need to come and see it. The opportunity that you gave me to do this artwork is a once in a lifetime and an honor to represent our people, to be a part of this amazing building. I want to give credit to my son David. I don't think it would be what it is without him standing next to me, doing this with me. I want to also mention Allison Bremner and Clifton Guthrie, who worked on this with me. 6 months carving, 43 boards, 600 square feet. You never think you're ever going to have the opportunity to do something like this. And we'll always be grateful and amazed that we were able to work on this. Just amazing. I want to mention the fact that my sons are my right and left hand. They're my heart. They're pretty amazing kids. I'm lucky. A Yeltkanu. Will Silo Haselsu in school. I'm lucky to be able to work with my boys. I've been influential in my village in bringing back potlatching and totem pole raising. Had the opportunity to change our culture that way. My sons are following me. Amazing potlatches like the one I did for my mother. Trying to revive things the way they were in the old days for the same reasons. It honors me to be the leader of Githon, the people of the salmon. It's made up of Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian, even though we are known as a Tsimshian group. We've traveled all over this country, from East Coast to West Coast, North and South. We've gone to Europe. Everywhere we go, we say, our culture is alive and well. Our culture is strong. Look at these young people. Look at the way they hold themselves. We try to raise the bar for ourselves when it comes to doing something new all the time. That's why we come to celebration. You know, when we come to celebration that we've spent 2 years working our tails off trying to make new things, trying to be fresh, because our culture is fresh, it's not old. We've become a mask dance group. But all of the people in the Northwest Coast had beautiful masks. And I'm proud to say that many groups, not just Tsimshian groups now, are using masks more now since my group has brought out so many. Robert Davidson's group, the Rainbow Creek Dancers, are one of our favorites. The Tlingit group from Teslin, up on the Yukon, Dakaquan, amazing group from Klawak. They've got some amazing masks. We have some young people too, and all the young, you go to Celebration and watch how many young people are singing and dancing now. I threw that other picture in because that's my young son. I'm real proud of him and the ability that he has to make those big box drums and bent-wood boxes and all the things that he makes. I was a school teacher. I'm running out of time. I really am. We started 10 minutes late, but I'll go faster. I'll go faster. I was a school teacher for 13 years in Washington and in Alaska. I was basketball coach at Metlakatla. I taught in 2 different schools in Washington State. I was a head coach in Ballard High School in 1 year, and out on the coast. But I was in Metlakatla for 9 years, and that gave me the experience to teach classes that I continue to teach now. Except now I teach things like box drums, masks, rattles. I want to tell you a story. This is connected to our language. Some of you might have heard me say this before. I'll try to do it quickly. About 10, 12 years ago, I took my dance group out to North Carolina to dance at the Cherokee Festival. The night before all of the festivities were to take place and all the dance groups from all over the Western Hemisphere were going to be performing, we all got together at a gala put on by the tribe, and each dance group had 5 minutes to show what they were going to show during the week to the people who were funding this thing. Everybody was in, all dressed to the nines, and we were waiting our turn. We were going to do a couple of mass dances. And the guy before us was from Tellico, Oklahoma. He was a relation to the Eastern Cherokees. The Trail of Tears. They all had to move from the east out to Oklahoma back in the day. And the guy got up there and he was talking, and I was sitting there behind him waiting in my regalia and our dancers. And one of the last things he said was, I'm really sad to say this, but there are only 10,000 Cherokee speakers left. You could have heard my jaw hit the ground. And all the things I was planning to say, I was going to get up there and do my protocol, and I was going to say things in our language, and I was, and talk quickly so we could show our couple of dances. And the first thing out of my mouth was 10,000. And everybody laughed. It must have been 500 people there. And I said, we don't have 10. Nobody laughed. Ever since then, I have been on the journey to try to revive or keep my culture from dying. There are only 40 Somalic speakers left on the planet, approximately. Now, I'm not sure that's true. There could be 55. There could be 35. But it's somewhere in there. It's about as many people are in this room, plus a few others, that speak my language, full speakers. And these are 2 of them. And they're all older than me. They're all in their 70s and 80s. A few are in their late 60s. So I teach. I teach what I know. I teach what I'm able to do. I was lucky to be raised by my grandparents, and I heard them every day. I was telling somebody yesterday, I kick myself now because I grew up in a house where all I heard was Somalic, our language. Why didn't I demand my grandparents just speak that to me and not English? Why didn't I demand that? Well, because I didn't think they'd ever leave. I always thought they were always going to be there. Young people are so dumb, We have a new generation in my village. My son and his friends, they formed a foundation called the Hike Foundation. Hike is spirit. They're trying to find money to put them and a few other young people together with elder speakers from British Columbia so that they can be the next generation of Tsimshian speakers. I'm going home in a few weeks to teach a class for them to get that ball rolling. I was raised, that little lady's about 4'9". She was the most wonderful. My grandparents, Albert and Dora Bolton, I have no other reason except that they are my biggest influences, bar none, in my life. And my grandfather is my hero, still. He's the reason I'm standing here in front of you. I hope I haven't bored you today. I hope that I've told you things that when you go away from this talk today, you'll say, "Wow, that was worth my time. That was worth it for us to sit here and listen to the journey of this man has been on." So, Metlakatla de Wilwatku. Metlakatla is where I'm from. Tsimshian. Lul Ajik Sigoru. De Wilwilay Khani go de Wilwilayu. I'm proud to know what I know. Metlakatla is where I'm from. Ayeltkanu. Ayeltkanu de Wiltayu kwa. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really lucky to be here. I appreciate all of you coming to listen to what I have to say. As I go off into the future with my new wife, married in June, we look forward to our culture living. Her sons and my sons, we dance together. She put this PowerPoint together for me. I could not have stood here in front of you had it not been for her, because this is the extent of my technology. Thank you all very much. That's all I have to show you. Oh, I guess I'm supposed to ask you if you have any questions. I almost made it. I'm only 5 minutes over. That's pretty cool. So if you have any questions, if you don't, it's okay. But if you do, I'd be happy to answer anything you might have. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way to get seal whiskers, bulbous whiskers, in Alaska?
Boy, you know what? Where have you heard that before, Lee? You know what? I would really like to have some sea lion whiskers for my headdresses.
That's what I need.
Yeah. You know what? People aren't eating seals or sea lion the way they used to. And in order to have a sea lion, or a set of whiskers from a sea lion, you got to have an old sea lion, big one with whiskers that long. People aren't eating sea lion very much, and you don't want to go shoot a sea lion just for the whiskers. You know, you want to make sure that meat goes somewhere. People are going to. There's lots of sea lions. There's way more sea lions than could ever be wiped out if you got one or two for whiskers. But it's just really hard to do. I've got them. I put out that word all the time. But there's some people up in Anchorage I was asking, and I've asked certain people around here too. So, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. People like to use fish line. Years ago, I made my first headdress and used heavy-duty fish line, and I dyed it and shaved it to look like. But now they make this weird fish line now that it curls, you know, and it doesn't go straight up. You know, it has this curl to it. So I use other things now like feathers or baleen or this. I cheated and went to one of those avant-garde stores that sells all kinds of vases and hoop-de-doo stuff, you know, and I bought some these long plants, and I clipped those off and shaved those off and put them on one. It kind of looks like sea lion whiskers, but then it doesn't. That was a great question. Anyone else? Wow, all those slides, all those pictures, you have no questions? Making it easy on me, thank you. This, I guess this is the last thing, if you're not going to ask me any more questions. I really appreciate you spending your time, because it really means the world to me. The culture, the fact that so much was taken away. My mom's generation was sent to, boarding schools and punished for speaking their language, and consequently they couldn't give me anything. My mom's generation couldn't give me anything when it came to the culture, or how to sing and dance, or how to put on a potlatch, or anything like that. In Metlakatla, it was completely gone. Completely gone. There was no one I could ask. So when you try to revive something that's completely gone, it's like a vacuum. If you're in a village where there are a few elders who remember some things, then it's easier. Then you can go and ask them, maybe. But the older the people get, the less knowledge there is, because they're not the people who are living in the 1800s. They're the people who were born and were raised in the turn of the century and up into the 30s and 40s still had knowledge. The people who are lucky enough to be listening to and paying attention to those people are the elders now, who can pass stuff on to us. So I'm done, I guess. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Marvelous journey for you to share this with us. I mean, I just can't tell you. I know that future generations are going to be singing your praises. I mean, to me, I feel so honored to stand in your presence, to see what you've done, to see what's possible, to see what you've done for not only your people, but for all of us. I think you've shown, and you're showing us, what we can do. I mean, I know that you might say that, yes, it was gone, but there must have been kernels of strength among your elders, that they gave you something so powerful. What strength you have. I just can't imagine how it was a one-man show where you raised sons to instill in them the pride, this thirst for learning of your culture, to teach your language, to teach your songs, to teach your dancing, to teach your art. I mean, the Tsimshian people must be so, so proud of you. And I could just only thank you. I just feel so honored for all that you have given. I mean, I know I've been with you at the Smithsonian. I've been with you in different parts of the country. I've seen you. But maybe at the time I wasn't truly appreciating all that you have done. And I just want to say, we are so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.